Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So, as advised by our Senior Vice President, Shri Pradeep Multani ji, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome each one of you in this very beautiful program, webinar, in fact, I should say, on making Madhya Pradesh an EV state. EV state हम मध्य प्रदेश को बनाएं, इसके बारे में आज एक चर्चा हम वेबिनार के थ्रू हम कर रहे हैं. And ladies and gentlemen, let me also share it with you today in one of our telecom program that is on cyber security. Number of people have also shown interest and they were there with me at 11 o'clock. They said we would love to connect in Madhya Pradesh webinar. So I also welcome all my members of PhD chamber, all my non-members from telecom committee also, and also from Madhya Pradesh chapter. As I have said, Madhya Pradesh chapter is being led as a chairman, Shri Pradeep Karambelkar ji, and we are very thankful to each one of you, those who have joined today. Please allow me to give a brief of the entire program. As I have said at the outset, the program starts sharp at 2 p.m. and it will be there till 4:40 p.m. So in the technical session, my request is with my colleague Ajay Bansal. He will take over and he will do the coordination with the panel discussion. So Ajay, it is your responsibility along with Puneet Chaudhary, because I have to have another meeting after 3:15 p.m. So I will be attending that, and post that I will be joining at the end, that is at 4:30 p.m. So with this note, ladies and gentlemen, let me share it with you, the program details today. We will have a theme remarks by Mr. Sanjeev Gupta, the chairman of Power, Renewable Energy and Alternate Energy Committee, PHDCCI. Post that, as I have shared it with you, we have Mr. Pradeep Multani ji, our Senior Vice President, PHDCCI. And as I have shared with each one of you, our presidential year starts from 1st October onwards. So he is going to take over as the president from 1st October 2021 as the president of PhD chamber. So he will be giving his presidential address. Post that, we are very lucky. We have Mr. Shamsher Diwan, Vice President at Group Head Ecra Limited. And I welcome Shri Diwan. He has been very instrumental in getting a great knowledge report. So that also we will unveil and also share the link to each participant as far as this knowledge report is concerned. Post that, we will have Mr. Aditya Singh, Indian Administrative Service. He is the Chief Executive Officer of a Smart City Bhopal, Government of Madhya Pradesh. He will be giving the remarks. We welcome Mr. Aditya Singh in this program. Then we will have Mr. Nikunj Kumar Srivastava. He is from Indian Administrative Service. He is the Commissioner, Urban Administrator and Development, Government of Madhya Pradesh. As my colleague Anirudh has already said that he would be joining sharp 2:30. So in absentia, I welcome him and he would be joining at 2:30. We will have Mr. Mukesh Jain. He is from Indian Police Service. He is the Commissioner, Transport, Government of Madhya Pradesh. So we welcome Shri Jain in this meaningful webinar. Of course, post that we will have the release of our knowledge report. As I have said, this is being made jointly by Ecra and PhD chamber. And then we will have the formal vote of thanks of the inaugural session by Mr. Pradeep Karambelkar. He is the chairman of Madhya Pradesh chapter, PHDCCI. Immediately, we will not have any break. We will be going for the panel discussion on creating a conducive ecosystem for EV adoption in Madhya Pradesh. And there, I am very happy to share it with you. We have a very young and dynamic co-chair, Mr. Salil Gupta. He is our co-chairman of the Power, Renewable Energy and Alternate Energy Committee, PHDCCI. He will be giving the opening remarks, and post that there is a panel discussion which is going to be moderated by Mr. Ashish Modani. He is the Vice President and Sector Head, Ecra Limited. And the panelists would be Shrimati Nidhi Singh Rajput, CEO, Smart City, Jabalpur, Government of Madhya Pradesh, Mr. Firoz Meshram, CGM, MPP, MCL, Dr. Surendra Vajpayee, EEMPUBNL, Mr. Varun Chaturvedi, Founder and CEO, Baltic EV Charging, Mr. S. Muralidharan, Chairman, Mobility Aftermarket Private Limited, Mr. Tusharjit Bharadwaj, Founder, Surya Urjaa Technology, Mr. Shailesh Agarwal, CEO, Electric Vehicle Manufacturer Gwalior, Mr. Sanyog Tiwari, EV Urjaa Private Limited. We will, of course, post that we will have a question and answer session with Dr. Surendra Bajpayee, and then the formal vote of thanks and the concluding remarks would be given by Ms. Preeti Saluja. She is the co-chairperson of Madhya Pradesh chapter PHDCCI. And ladies and gentlemen, as I have shared it with you, she is also the Vice Chancellor of SAM Global University. And let me also share it with you, a very young, inspiring girls of more than 100 girls from SAM Global University are also joined this program. And we also welcome each and every student of SAM Global University, and they are the future managers of our inspiring country. So this is a complete set of today's discussions. I understand that more than 1.5 hour session, and the people in webinar are literally, at times are restless. But I request each and every speaker to kindly be brief, to the point, so that the other speakers will also have the chance to speak and then take the program forward. So with this note now, it's my proud privilege to invite Mr. Sanjeev Gupta, a very dynamic chairman of our Power, Renewable Energy and Alternate Energy Committee, PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to kindly share the theme of the programs today. And I must share it with you, under his leadership only, we have had 1.5 months back a program on EV vehicle. More than 9 countries people also joined in that program. So I would request Mr. Gupta, if you can also share some of the brief of that program too. Over to you, Mr. Sanjeev Gupta ji.
Thank you, Yogesh. Good afternoon, co-learners. I am privileged to welcome our chief guest for the day, Mr. Nikunj Kumar Srivastava, IAS Commissioner, Urban Administration and Development, Government of Madhya Pradesh. Mr. Mukesh Jain, IPS Commissioner, Transport, Government of Madhya Pradesh. Mr. Aditya Singh, IAS, CEO, Smart City Bhopal. Mr. Shamsher Devan, Vice President and Group Head Ecra. Our learned Senior Vice President, Mr. Pradeep Multani ji, Salil Gupta, Saurabh Sanyal ji, Dr. Yogesh Srivastava, the entrepreneurs and all the dear delegates present here. I welcome you all on this lovely afternoon from Delhi. I'm sure Madhya Pradesh is equally pleasant. Delhi's going through the bout of pleasantness and heat. So it's quite interesting here though. So I take this initiative of sharing with you today that this initiative of organizing joint programs is being carried forward by the Madhya Pradesh chapter along with Power Committee, which is typically called the Energy Committee and comprises of Power, Renewable Energy and Alternate Energy of PhD Chamber. And what we are discussing today is the most important topic, which is not only changing the fortunes of the transportation sector, but also the entire way in which the energy is going to be consumed and used in future, which is the electric vehicles. And that is what we are trying to discuss today, and what MP as a state is doing and what it can do is what is the theme, sir. So let me just start by saying that India, of course, has to transition to an electric vehicle country. And of course, it's very important for it to reduce its fuel import bill and burgeoning carbon footprint. In India, the transport sector alone accounts for 18% of the total energy consumption. Most of you are aware of this. But what is more important is that this demand is primarily being met through crude oil import, and it is a very significant drain on India's economy. Besides, to meet the commitments, the government of India has to reduce the emissions intensity by 33 to 35% by 2030. And to cater to the increasing demand of the energy sources, it is extremely important and necessary to find and promote alternative sources to crude oil. Electric mobility coupled with the affordable technology and support infrastructure is a possible alternate to tackle this humongous problem and the challenge. Moreover, India can achieve its international commitments on green energy, which we have made in the Paris Convention. And the states like Madhya Pradesh, one of the largest states, have to actually complement this Government of India mission at the state level, because all things in the energy sector specifically which get designed at the center has to be implemented effectively by the states. EV industry is a crawling one. To achieve EV penetration in transportation sector by 2030, Government of India has already adopted the FAME policy. And it is likely to drive the growth of EV market in India, which is what the mission is of the FAME policy. This has been formulated by the National Electricity Mobility Mission, which is what I'm sure most of you are aware of, and it is intended to support the EV market and its manufacturing in the country. The objective of the plan is on technology development, demand creation, changing the infrastructure, creating a charging infrastructure around this ecosystem that is developing, and scaling up the production of the EVs. So a critical mass is what EV must achieve, like any other vehicle, to actually get to that level. Going ahead, the manufacturing of EVs in India will significantly depend on the quality and access to charging infrastructure. This can be encouraged further by creating enabling framework with adequate policies and regulations. So I think this is the background in which I would like to now talk about a few recommendations for the growth of EV and the related industry in India. So one of the most important things is customizing India's EV policy to the Indian auto industry today. And this is very important in the long-term facts that I just brought out, that India needs to be established as a technology and a manufacturing leadership in the EV sector so that it can take the center stage along with its various Asian and global counterparts on the countryside in the global leadership state. So the opportunity and potential to take the leadership is what I was bringing out as the nation, and it has to lay the foundation of transformation, manufacturing and industrial policy. Madhya Pradesh is required, it's essential, and it is duty bound to now support this India's leading EV production destination. Increasingly, the efficiency of vehicles, incentivization of developments to increase efficiency by reducing energy consumption shall also enable the vehicles to travel the same distance with smaller battery packs, which will not only allow this electric vehicles to actually become a bigger success, but also deliver its true mission that it has to. Encouraging R&D on technology transformation, it is imperative that R&D should actually lead to the commercialization in EV space and promote long-term R&D in all aspects of EV technology is what we are looking at Madhya Pradesh, again for as PhD chamber. Increasing in employment opportunities, again a very important mission. Government of India, globally, all countries, the developed and the developing, are as of now trying to increase these employment opportunities. And in India, energy players have entered the mobility industry, with some traditional power companies also exploring the charging infrastructure, and infrastructure companies are seen entering the battery business. I'm sure most of you are aware that it has become very important for companies now getting into the clean energy space also to try and take their place in the sunshine in this charging and the storage space. So some of these and more important things that we will deliberate today is what we are looking at Madhya Pradesh to help the Indian mission of driving electric vehicles into the center stage. Similarly, in PhD chamber, we've recently done a national seminar on, first discussing it at the national level, and we brought in players from all walks of life, including the leader of this mission from the Niti Aayog side, and the government of India's various functionaries on various aspects of electric vehicles. Not only that, the companies at the national level and the green energy companies. So for the benefit of all of you, the key mission that we realized was that the storage and the promotion of electric vehicles at the state level is very, very important. And that's what we are now trying to promote and pursue. With that, I would hand you back to Yogesh Srivastava ji, and would also feel that today's deliberations will not only add to the science and the commerce, but also a national mission, which is very, very important in the sense of the entire clean energy space and in the sense of clean mobility Government of India, through the Honorable Prime Minister, has actually given PhD a mission already, which we are pursuing, which is clean kilometers and increasing them. So I think that's what I would invite all of you to join us in today's deliberation for. And I wish today's deliberations all the success and look forward to co-learning with you. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for your wonderful setting the theme for today's discussions. And I believe on your behalf, I think I have the right to say on behalf of my chairman, Mr. Sanjeev Gupta, that there are a number of recommendations in the past on the policy advocacy front. We have been meeting over here with the Secretary Power and a number of initiatives. Senior VP sir, I must share it with you that under the leadership of Mr. Gupta, that we have been doing number of programs, and last program which we have done for EV. I now would like to request my chairman Pradeep Karambelkar ji that whatever recommendations you are getting, which you are compiling, please send it directly to Mr. Sanjeev Gupta, is the chairman. Of course, you can always mark CC to us. What we will do, we will compile all these informations, and under the leadership of Mr. Gupta, we will certainly be sharing the same with Government of India so that a conclusive development as far as EV is concerned can happen in India and especially in Madhya Pradesh. So thank you very much, Mr. Gupta, for this and for your wonderful remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been told by my colleague that MP Urjaa Vikas Nigam is the sponsor of this program. So at the outset, I must put it on record so that there is no ambiguity. I think Anirudh, I have already done my duty, though in such kind of things, the vote of thanks when Mr. Pradeep Karambelkar ji will be giving, he will certainly be sharing the name. And I am noting down each and every comment of the people, those who are sending me on the WhatsApp. I would request to please share on the chat box so that once we have a question and answer session, then we will be able to refer it to them. So with this note now, I would like to request our Senior Vice President, Mr. Pradeep Multani ji, to kindly come forward and give his presidential address. Over to you, Mr. Multani.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yogesh. Good afternoon and welcome to the webinar on making Madhya Pradesh an electric vehicle state. We have eminent panelists today here with us, Mr. Nikunj Kumar Srivastava, IAS, Mr. Mukesh Jain, IPS, Mr. Aditya Singh, IAS, Mr. Shamsher Diwan, Mr. Sanjeev Gupta, Mr. Salil Gupta, Mr. Pradeep Karambelkar, Ms. Preeti Saluja, Mr. Saurabh Sanyal, Dr. Yogesh Srivastava, entrepreneurs and dear delegates. At the outset, I would like to compliment the Government of India and various state governments, especially the Government of Madhya Pradesh, for the progressive policies and continuous endeavors for promoting adoption of electric vehicles in India. As you are aware, India is one of the fastest growing economies in the world, and the economic growth does create some strain on the environment and our resources. Our government has been making proactive policies to reduce the harmful effects of human activities on the environment. Encouraging adoption of electric vehicles in India is one such step out of the large number of steps which need to be taken for sustainable development. Sustainable adoption of electric vehicles is not without its challenges. Charging infrastructure, high cost of batteries, investment required by auto companies in changing their processes for manufacturing electric vehicles still remain major challenges. While the union government is doing its best in promoting electric vehicles, state governments should also take more steps to promote adoption of electric vehicles and investments in electric vehicle manufacturing in India, batteries and charging equipments. A lot of R&D, technology upgradation and innovations are required in the sector to make the adoption of electric vehicles affordable and sustainable and to become Atmanirbhar in electric vehicles sector. Madhya Pradesh is the second largest state in India in terms of area and fifth largest in terms of population. It is also amongst the top 5 two-wheeler markets in India. Pithampur Auto Cluster and Devas are two prominent industrial areas of the region. Along with Pithampur, there is strong OEM manufacturing base in Jabalpur, Gwalior, Indore and Bhopal. Madhya Pradesh may capitalize on this existing base and create an ecosystem for becoming a hub of electric vehicles and changing equipment in India. PHD Chamber of Commerce and Industry has been working as a catalyst for the promotion of Indian industry, trade and entrepreneurship for the past 116 years. It is a forward-looking, proactive and dynamic pan-India apex organization. As a partner in progress with the industry and government, PHDCCI, with a special focus on MSMEs, works at the grassroots level with strong national and international linkages for propelling progress, harmony, and integrated development in the Indian economy. PHD Chamber reaches out to more than 150,000 companies, majority of which are MSMEs. We have created a special committee on power, renewable energy, and alternate energy. PHDCCI has a special focus on sustainability and clean energy, as also we are encouraging new innovations like electric vehicles and startups in various sectors, and we are playing our own part in making a great nation Atmanirbhar in various sectors. I would like to acknowledge continuous support of MP Urjaa Vikas Nigam Limited to PHDCCI for successfully organizing various webinars for Madhya Pradesh. I would also like to thank Ecra for being the knowledge partner and EV Tech News to be the media partner for the webinar. Jai Hind, thank you, and God bless everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, Senior VP sir. Thank you very much for your wonderful words and for your wonderful presidential address. And it was really meaningful in terms of putting all the perspective in place. Now, I would like to request Mr. Shamsher Diwan, he is the Vice President at Group Head, Ecra Limited, to kindly give his address, please. Over to you, Mr. Shamsher Diwan.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Ecra, I would like to thank PhD Chambers of Commerce for giving us an opportunity to collaborate for this unique, insightful project, wherein we have shared our views on the electric vehicle market in India and on the various state policies that are being initiated by state governments in India. We have a brief presentation, for the interest of the audience here today, and I'll quickly run through that presentation. Over the next, 10 minutes or so, we'll be sharing basically our insights on the global EV industry today and what kind of learnings, the key markets provide to us in terms of accelerating the penetration of electric vehicles in India. We will also be discussing briefly about the various state policies that have been announced so far, keeping Madhya Pradesh in the focus. Now, there has been significant change in the EV landscape over the last decade. The global automobile industry is witnessing a major shift wherein conventional engines are getting replaced by electric motors and batteries. Now, this transition will not only impact the Oems, but also the entire vendor system and the other stakeholders in the ecosystem, whether it is the oil producing companies, the refineries, the financiers, and others. We all understand now that the transition to EVs is actually inevitable. But the answer everyone is looking for is when and how. If we look at the global EV landscape, China has clearly taken a head start, whereas traditional automobile markets like US, Japan, South Korea, and now Europe are playing a catch-up game. China has clearly taken a lead over the other markets in the EV space, especially with respect to the development of the complete vendor ecosystem as well as the charging infrastructure. Today, electric vehicles account for 4.5% of total new car sales, and its share is likely to exceed 5% in the current calendar year. Europe now has emerged as the key growth driver since 2020, supported by various incentive programs announced by the government and also the tighter emission norms which are playing out. Now, certain global markets, especially the US and Europe, have moved to electric vehicles via the hybrid technology. gradually investing in battery technology while continuing to support the conventional powertrains at the same time. About 61% of total cars that were sold in 2020 were actually hybrid, although the share of EVs have been on an increasing pace at the same time. Now, in fact, while new vehicle sales actually declined last year because of COVID-induced disruption across the globe, but electric vehicles actually saw an handsome growth, particularly in Europe, where it emerged as a growth engine and clocked 135% growth, although on somewhat of a low base. Now, increase in incentives, particularly in form of cash rebates and scrappage incentives, have benefited EV sales in some of the key markets in Europe, particularly Germany and France, where EVs now account for a decent 10% of total new car sales. A creation of low and urban low emission zones is also something which is promoting the use of electric vehicles to avoid different kind of disincentives which the governments have put in place. I'll now move on to the next slide and showcase what's happening in other parts of the world. Now, India clearly has a long way to go to catch up, or rather leapfrog, with other larger markets, both in terms of availability of electric cars or other OEMs and charging infrastructure, as well as the vendor ecosystem. Now, to put things in perspective, in China there are over 200 electric vehicle models that are available for consumers to choose from, and with the cheapest one being actually priced at just 3.5 lakhs. Now, this is a price which is lower than the cheapest car even in India. Now, China therefore has clearly taken a lead over others in the overall EV ecosystem. Now, let me talk about some other markets. Let's say in the UK, the government has announced restrictions on the movement of conventional vehicles in low emission zones, and similar license plate restrictions exist in some Chinese cities like Shanghai and Beijing. Now, one thing that clearly differentiates other markets with India is also the charging infrastructure. While there are ambitious plans to really substantially improve the charging penetration, on-ground implementation in India so far has remained somewhat minimal. Accordingly, we feel that India needs to take serious steps towards developing a charging infrastructure, a local supplier ecosystem to gain meaningful traction in the overall electric vehicle space. As is the case for any industries, economy of scale plays a very important role. But this is similar to a chicken and egg situation where one feels what will come first, whether the infrastructure or the ecosystem or the actual demand for consumers will come first. Now, let us look at the Indian EV market more closely. It is a well-known fact that India is the largest two-wheeler and the three-wheeler market globally, and among the top 5 in commercial vehicles as well as in cars. While India is among the leading global automobile market for conventional vehicles, its share in electric vehicles so far has remained negligible. Unlike other markets where focus is largely towards cars and buses, electric three-wheelers and two-wheelers account for bulk of the total domestic EV sales, at least as of now. Presence towards personal mobility has been impacted with three-wheeler demand, though electric two-wheelers and passenger cars have grown handsomely in the last fiscal. Now, unlike the car segment, where China has taken a massive lead, we believe that India can still work on electrifying its two-wheeler and three-wheeler segments due to a very favorable total cost of ownership now, and also reasonable volumes, which can translate into economies of scale. The recent surge in fuel prices is also something which makes the total cost of ownership, particularly for two-wheelers as well as for three-wheelers, much more a compelling proposition than it has been ever. The next slide talks about the trend in EV sales in Q1 of this year. As you can see, the volumes have almost reached the Q1 of fiscal 2020 level, and the rise in fuel prices and the recently announced changes in the FAME 2 policy, as well as the state level policies which have been put in place, is clearly working in favor of electric vehicles now in India. Now, if we analyze the key drivers for electric penetration, there are certain structural issues which have constrained the growth of EVs in India. Now, despite the strong government push, affordability and charging infrastructure continue to remain a challenge, especially in the passenger car segment and also in some extent in the light commercial vehicle segment. Absence of local vendor ecosystem and high dependency on imports, particularly for battery cells, is something that India really needs to look at. However, increasing awareness among buyers, the recent changes in the demand subsidy at both the FAME 2 level as well as at the state government policy level, plus the improving cost of ownership, as I just recently mentioned, on the sharp increase in fuel prices, are some of the tailwinds that the EV industry in India is looking forward to. Now, let us look at the policy support in India. The policy push from the government serves dual purpose of cutting down import fuel bill as well as reducing the air pollution levels, something which we are really concerned about. Several states have also, now prepared their EV policies, and I think the number stands at about 13 states which have, approved and notified their policies as on yesterday, which provide both direct and indirect financial support. The government had actually come out with FAME 1 policy back in 2015, which had an estimated layout of about 1,000 crores, out of which 60% got utilized between 2015 and 2019. Overall, the performance was actually quite suboptimal, with less than 0.5% of EV sales in the two-wheeler segment during that period. Subsequently, the government came out with FAME 2 policy with a much higher allocation of 10,000 crores. But despite that policy push, except for electric buses, the actual performance of FAME 2 has been tepid, at least till now. Some of the reasons which can be attributed to this are stringent technical and localization requirements, especially in the two-wheeler and the three-wheeler segment. Initially, the demand incentives were capped at two-wheelers for two-wheelers and three-wheelers, and the incentives in the car segment was also available for commercial operations only. Even in the bus segment, while the government has sanctioned many projects for the SRTUs, most of them are actually yet to ply on the Indian roads. While the policy push from the central and the state government continues and it is only gaining momentum, lack of adequate charging infrastructure is something which is playing on the minds of people before they make their decision to buy a car, especially in the PV segment. Now, let us talk about the recent changes in the FAME 2 policy. Now, broadly, there are two major changes that the government has announced. First, they've increased the purchase incentive for electric two-wheelers to 15,000 rupees per kilowatt hour from 10,000 rupees earlier, and they've increased the cap at 40% of the vehicle cost, which was 20% earlier. The second change which has been brought about is that the FAME 2 policy was earlier for 3 years, and now this has been extended proactively by another 2 years till 31st of March 2024. Now, all these changes have provided long-term visibility to the entire EV stakeholder ecosystem and have also improved the attractiveness of EVs for consumers from a total cost of ownership perspective. The increase in incentive is actually quite positive for the electric two-wheeler segment, as you can see on the slide. Vehicle prices which are already viable from a total cost of ownership perspective will further come down now. The original upfront cost for a basic electric two-wheeler, let's say a Hero Electric Optima, was already lower than the petrol two-wheeler. There was no registration cost as well for electric two-wheelers. And with the subsidy increase, the upfront cost for the basic variants will come down by additional 12%, and the differential will increase to about 22%. The basic model will be now lower by about 8,000 to 9,000 rupees because of the incremental subsidy. Now, there will be incremental savings on premium two-wheelers as well, which will see a price reduction or have already seen a price reduction of 10 to 12% or 15,000 rupees. At Ecra, we believe that the changes in FAME 2 policy and the sharp increase in petrol prices have meant that the payback period for electric two-wheelers, which used to be 4 years earlier, has now reduced to just 3 years. Now, specific states have also given their EV policies, and it is very heartening to see that in most cases, the policies are offering incentive to consumers over and above the FAME 2 incentives which are available. Particularly, I think some of the states like Maharashtra have not only just given the incentive, they've also offered some early bird discounts, which mainly mean that the momentum in EV segment is just bound to increase. Many states have also looked at creating the supply network and also the charging infrastructure. And just to share some numbers, government of Maharashtra has particularly given opportunity for real estate developers to at least have 20% of the new buildings coming with parking, which have electric connections available. Now, moving to the next slide, if we talk about this particular issue which is there for the EV sector is the charging infrastructure. Now, if we look at the total charging infrastructure which is available in India, that's close to about 1,000 to 1,200 publicly available charging stations. Now, if we look at this number and look at what China does, this is the total number of public charging stations that China adds on a daily basis. So clearly, India has a long way to go as far as connecting our vehicles to these hybrid systems is concerned. Now, why is this important? Because if you look at some of the recent studies which show that over 50% of vehicles in India actually do not have a dedicated parking space, and hence they are largely parked on roads or in neighborhood locations. Now, in such a situation, even access to a private charging infrastructure is going to be a big bottleneck. EV manufacturers will therefore have to look at some innovative solutions to overcome such issues. Now, almost all OEMs in the Indian market, whether it is in the two-wheeler space or in the car space, have recently stepped up their investments in the electric vehicle segment. Most incumbent OEMs are developing EVs in-house and have collaborated with startups or foreign players to reduce the speed to market and also maintain capital efficiency, besides getting access to the technology. The industry, however, faces issues on the inverted duty structure, resulting in sizable funds getting blocked. This could create funding issues for some of the startups which have limited financial flexibility. Now, from an auto component supplier perspective, especially for powertrain systems, which will be adversely impacted due to EV transition, we feel that the impact is going to be there, but it will be gradual. Currently, imports account for bulk of the EV components, especially on the transmission side. While our dependency on imported battery cells will continue for some time, other components, particularly motors, controllers, and other sub-components, are going to get localized in the next 12 to 18 months. The next slide talks about the capital subsidies which are offered by various states for developing the local EV ecosystem, and I'll not touch much about this because most of these are well known. Now, given the fact that we have a very special focus today, we'll talk about the automobile market in Madhya Pradesh. MP is, as we know, is the second largest state in India in terms of area, and it is also the 5th largest in terms of population. It is among the top 5 two-wheeler markets in India. Pithampur cluster and the Devas are two prominent industrial areas in the state. Along with Pithampur, there is a strong manufacturing base even in Jabalpur, Gwalior, and Bhopal. The clusters provide employment to over 25 to 30,000 people. With presence of close to, I think, about 200 engineering colleges and 1,000 ITIs, Madhya Pradesh is, provides a great platform for large-scale base of skilled and technical manpower, especially for the auto sector. Notably, many of the auto OEMs are also present in Madhya Pradesh. These include Volvo Eicher commercial vehicles, John Deere, and even Force Motor. Some of the tire manufacturers like Bridgestone, JK Tire, and many auto component manufacturers like Mahle and JBM Group also have significant manufacturing presence in the state. In terms of auto sales, MP accounts for 7% of total two-wheeler sales in India. However, in absence of a meaningful direct subsidy, The share of electric two-wheelers is relatively modest at about 3% as of now. In the three-wheeler segment, MP's share is about 4%. MP has one of the largest reserves for manganese and copper as well, which are the key commodities for manufacturing some of the components for EVs. We believe that there is a strong potential, therefore, for EV growth to accelerate in the state, especially in the two-wheeler segment, both for urban commuters as well as for last mile connectivity, whether it is in the cities or in the rural hinterland. Now, in case the government can provide direct capital subsidy here, I think that will only further accelerate the EV adoption in times to come. We'll now discuss about Ecra's expectation from the EV industry over the next 5 years. Our analysis suggests that affordability, availability of models, and range anxiety and lack of financing are some of the key impediments for the EV penetration, at least as of now, for the Indian consumers. Today, despite presence of 60 electric two-wheelers, consumers are not aware about the cost versus benefits and are partially concerned about the resale values of vehicles after 4 to 5 years. Residual value is also a key concern for vehicle financiers, especially in backdrop of declining battery pack prices. Now, given that 7 to 8 year life of batteries, residual value of repossessed vehicles could be significantly impacted. EV OEMs must come out with innovative solutions, therefore, to address some kind of concerns that the financiers have, whether by offering assured buybacks for a certain number of years, which can bring some level of confidence both in the consumers as well as in the financiers' mind space. Now, scooters, intercity buses, and three-wheelers have limited range related requirements, and therefore, in our view, these are the segments which are going to drive early adoption of electric vehicles in India. The recent changes in the government policy, particularly in FAME, are also very supportive for these segments. India can capitalize its two-wheeler and three-wheeler segment to emerge as a leading manufacturer, not just for India, but also for globally. And we expect that in the next 10 years, 10% of total new vehicle sales will actually be electric vehicles. EV penetration will vary across segments from a low of just 0.5% in FY21. We expect that in the two-wheeler segment, it will reach about 8 to 10% in the next 3 years. It will be much higher in the electric three-wheeler segment at about 30%. Likewise, in the bus segment also, we expect significant EV adoption to happen. However, in the car segment, it is likely to remain relatively subdued thanks to the requirements of having a sizable charging infrastructure. Now, with this, we'll conclude our presentation and hand it over to Srivastava ji.
Thank you very much, sir, for your wonderful remarks, and you have given the complete analysis of the EV sector, especially not only the bus sector, but in all segments. May I request the host to kindly remove the PPT slide which is there on the screen?
Sure, sir.
Yogesh ji, Commissioner Sahab Nikunj Srivastava has joined.
Yes, I will invite.
We welcome you, sir.
Yes, so I am very happy that Shri Nikunj Kumar Srivastava is from Indian Administrative Service, Commissioner, Urban Administration and Development, Government of Madhya Pradesh. He is there with us. सर, हम आपका तहे दिल से हार्दिक स्वागत करते हैं. ये जो कंप्लीट आज हम प्रोग्राम आज हम कर रहे हैं, वेबिनार ऑन मध्य प्रदेश ऑन ईवी स्टेट, वी आर वेरी हैप्पी दैट यू आर हियर, सर. और अब हम आपसे जानना चाहेंगे, सर, वी वुड लव टू हैव योर व्यूज दैट हाउ मध्य प्रदेश इज सर्टेनली गोइंग टू हैव सच काइंड ऑफ मीनिंगफुल टेक्नोलॉजी, और इससे मध्य प्रदेश के एरियाज में क्या क्या सर संभावनाएं हैं, जो कि अभी हमारे शमशेर दीवान साहब ने बताया. तब हम आपसे जानना चाहेंगे, सर, आपके व्यूज जानना चाहेंगे on the EV sector, especially in Madhya Pradesh. Over to you, Srivastava.
Thank you very much, Yogesh, and thank you very much, PhD Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to participate in this webinar. And I joined a little late, so I could not see the entire presentation of Ecra, but was pretty impressed with whatever last by seeing the last few slides of the presentation, and definitely a very comprehensive picture of the EV vehicle scenario in the country was presented. And there's no doubt that the future of both the personal transport and the commercial transport lies with electric vehicles. And and particularly in the urban areas, and given the challenges we're facing in terms of the air quality, and given the aspiration that all of us have to have a pollution free environment, we do need to promote electric vehicle. And keeping this in mind, the government of Madhya Pradesh issued its electric vehicle policy, which you might be aware. I think this was notified somewhere in 2019, in the late November 19. And government also came out with some incentive policy. I think you would be aware about it, like they reduced the motor vehicle tax on the electric vehicles. They have also made the registration of electric vehicles. They made it free of cost. And there is some policy from the Urban Development Department not to charge any parking fees on electric vehicles. However, much still needs to be done, and we are open to suggestions. And we would also like to, if there has been some study of the impact of, I'll be very happy that if PhD Chamber of Commerce and Ecra can do an analysis, a comparative analysis of the policies of the different states. And we can also see that what are the learnings from Madhya Pradesh. We can also see the impact of our own policy in the last 1 year. I believe that one of the key, issue that we need to address is the EV charging infrastructure. So the moment, there has been some progress in that side also. The three cities have, I believe, three cities, Bhopal, Indore, and Jabalpur, have entered into MOU with NTPC and REIL for establishment of about 217 EV charging infrastructure. I think that's a key thing that we must focus on. And this year we'll make sure that the places have been identified, the public parking places, and the MOU has also taken place. Now we have to pursue with these NTPC and REIL, and we'll be open for any other company also. We'll also see that what could be the other options for expediting the establishment of the charging infrastructure, because that's going to be without infrastructure, we'll not be able to incentivize the private people to procure electric vehicles. The government of India under its 15th FC also is pretty has got a mandate, and much of our urban sector fund is not tied to improvement in air quality, and establishment of related infrastructure, promotion of electric vehicle is definitely going to contribute. So this will remain our priority. And as I mentioned, that we are open to suggestions from the industry. We are open to suggestions from the PhD Chamber of Commerce. We are open to suggestions from any organization that has done research, that has done some kind of comparative study, and how can we further improve our own policy. I believe another challenge with because I know that we procured 40 electric vehicles in Indore under FAME 1. Under FAME 2 also we had significant number of electric public transport vehicles approved, but because of the heavy cost, because of the heavy financial implication, we could not actually decide to heavy financial implication in the operations. We could not actually decide to roll out those buses on road. And instead, right now so far the public transport is concerned, we are pursuing, we have thought of CNG buses, then electric vehicle buses, because they're much cheaper. So we also need to see that how can we develop a model where these kind of public transport buses, electric public transport buses, can be made economically also viable. The cost wise, we'll have to do some, because in the last tender that we had done, the kind of subsidy that we needed to provide to these vendors was very high. So the government decided not to go ahead with it. But yes, we do want to promote electric vehicles, and we are open to all kind of suggestions. And I'm happy to receive your suggestions. And thank you very much. I think this is all I have to say at this point of time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Srivastava sir. Thank you very much. And kindly do bear with us for some 5 to 6 minutes more. We would certainly be having a knowledge report which is going to unveil, though the link of that knowledge report would be shared it with you, with each one of you.
Right.
But prior to that, I would like to request Mr. Mukesh Jain from Indian Police Service, is the Commissioner Transport, Government of Madhya Pradesh, to kindly give a brief address, sir, and post that we will go certainly for the release of the knowledge report. Over to you, Mr. Jain.
Thank you, Yogesh. First of all, let me thank PhD Chamber of Commerce, both national level and the MP chapter and the Energy Committee for holding this. And this is certainly timing. If you have read today's newspapers, yesterday, the UN climate report mentions about the red flag we have raised towards the greenhouse emissions and global warming, etc., etc. So I don't think this could have been better timed, this webinar. So first of all, let me just go through some figures which we come across in the various research reports. So the World Air Quality Report says that India may be host to 6 most polluted cities out of 10 cities. That's what I went through in one of the WEF seminars, etc., etc. And transportation sector unfortunately contributes to the maximum pollution. So I was reading somewhere that PM10, the contribution from transportation sector is about 19%, PM2.5 it's about 31%, and nitrogen oxide gases it's about 81%. So only if we change the transportation sector to the electric one, I think we would have achieved a substantial progress towards the greenhouse emission control, or let's say the cleaner or greener options. So if we are able to mainstream the electric vehicles, we would be able to achieve our ambition of greener and cleaner cities. Now, let's understand what we have been doing so far. So we understand the problems. Mr. Diwan nicely presented everything. What we can do in Madhya Pradesh, I'll go systematically. The first thing is fiscal incentives. Almost 27 states. Mr. Yogesh ji told about 13, but I remember there are about 27 states who have come up with some kind of a report on electric vehicles. Madhya Pradesh, in fact, was one of the first in 2019 to bring out a report, and a comprehensive one, a more ambitious one. So first is the fiscal incentive. What kind of incentives? And we understand very well, even after seeing the presentation of Mr. Diwan, that there is a substantial price differential. In fact, Nikunj also was mentioning that despite all these subsidies and despite all these tax concessions, we have a lot of gap between the price differential. So some kind of these incentives have to be further bridged between the conventional vehicles and the electric vehicles. So first thing is those differential taxation as well as the purchase subsidies kind of things. So this has to be done at a very aggressive level, I would say. That's the first thing we have to do. Second is tightening those CO2 norms, because if we remember this, the whole Europe story about the electric vehicles has not been about incentives or not about pushing anything else, but tightening those CO2 norms and tightening those pollution norms. So we might have to again, and I know we have to do it systematically and stepwise, so we can think of doing those low emission zones or those some kind of hospitals or schools or colleges. We can start with in cities. We have to sit together, those smart city people, the transportation and the health people, to decide what are these low emission zones we can decide on, so that we can tighten these CO2 norms for these. And once we do that, it will automatically work as a push towards the purchasing of EVs, etc., etc. That's the second thing I think I would like to mention. Third, which has been mentioned by almost everyone, Mr. Sanjeev Gupta as well as Mr. Diwan, that what kind of charging infrastructure. So I think the charging infrastructure has to be convenient, affordable, publicly accessible. These are 3 important things. And there are many dimensions to the charging infrastructure, apart from offering a, let's say, building code. So all the new buildings coming up in Maharashtra, the latest policy does say that the 20% of the place, etc., has to be mentioned for charging. So building code, it has to necessarily become part of a building code, that any new building coming up has to be providing for the infrastructure. Apart from that, we would have to create some kind of incentives for charging, and even the charging infrastructure has to be strategically located. Where do we want it? out of 1,000 in India, which is a very low number, we have to find out where exactly do we want it, inside the cities, on the national highways, etc. So I remember reading somewhere that Hyderabad Metro has entered into an MOU with Power Grid Corporation to have charging stations at all metro stations. So we would have to find out in Madhya Pradesh also what are those strategic locations, where do we really want the charging stations first. And the land policy and the land incentives also have to be modified accordingly so that we offer maximum concessions for people. And remember that these charging stations would not only be an economic opportunity, but be a great employment opportunity also. So we have to start working on these things also. The fourth thing is, which we haven't significantly touched today, is batteries. And many countries, so I remember reading about China and Chile, New Zealand, etc. They have worked on the whole value chain of batteries, right from material supplies to the disposal of the batteries. We have to work both at the policy level and at the R&D level so that it becomes cost effective as well as convenient. So the batteries, we should not forget that has to be. Last, to pick up from Mr. Divan's the thing that despite all our efforts, I think the immediate driver to EV in Madhya Pradesh and other similar states would be the three-wheeler segment. And I think we have to push both in terms of regulation as well as incentives, the three-wheeler segment, so that we achieve a significant mass of electric vehicles in three-wheeler segment. Apart from these 3-4 solutions, I would say that we would have to create some kind of collaborative business models. So let's say off the hand, I can think that e-mobility and shared so that we generate more this economy, startups. These are the small I wanted to talk about today. I firmly believe that Madhya Pradesh has the potential to become the battery manufacturing, and it can offer the maximum kind of thing to become the real center for the electric vehicles in India. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jain sir. Thank you very much for your wonderful words. And as I have said at the outset, we are certainly going to have a release of this knowledge report, but keeping in mind Madhya Pradesh needs. And this report has been made jointly by Ecra as well as PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So I believe Mr. Aditya Singh, CEO Smart City Bhopal, he could not join. I would like to request each and every speaker if they can kindly open their videos, and I would request the host to kindly at least share the first page of the knowledge report, and then we would be certainly sharing the link of the this knowledge report with each and everybody. So may I request the host to kindly release and share the front page of this knowledge report, and requesting each and everybody, those who are there today, to kindly open your videos so that you can have a look. I would also like to invite Dr. Bajpai from Urjaa Vikas Nigam Limited to kindly also be with us. I would also like to request Mr. Ambuj Sharma. He's the former Joint Secretary, and if he can also join, if he can also open his video and join in this knowledge report. So may I request a big round of applause for this wonderful report which Ecra has and the PhD has made jointly. And as Mr. Jain and Mr. Nikunj Srivastava ji has said, Anirudh, it is your responsibility to ensure to send the link to all the concerned, not only our senior government officials, but also all across industry, the link of this knowledge report. And if need be, we can always share some of the hard copies of these knowledge reports directly to the Commissioner Transport and also to Srivastava Sahab, from here. But immediately post this webinar, share the link of this knowledge report. I am very thankful to Ecra for such a wonderful work which they have done, and I am sure it is certainly going to be benefited, especially to our Madhya Pradesh, which is the heart of India, which is Dil of India. So, ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause once again on my request for this knowledge report. So, yes, with this note, now, ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to request, I know that number of People are asking questions. They are putting in the chat box. Let me share it with you. Each and every question you can have it post the technical session, and the next technical session is going to be taken care by both my colleagues Puneet Chaudhary and Ajay Bansal. So you can always have question and answer session in that. I would like to now request Mr. Pradeep Karambelkar, Chairman, Madhya Pradesh chapter, to kindly give the formal vote of thanks for this inaugural session. Over to you, Pradeep ji.
Thank you very much, Yogesh. And it was really a very thought-provoking program. I must thank first of all to Madhya Pradesh Urjaa Vikas Nigam and PhD whole to organize this wonderful program, because it's a sunrise industry. EV is a sunrise industry, and we are looking forward for this. And in Madhya Pradesh, especially, I think this is a wonderful opportunity for all of us to have electronic vehicle system and ecosystem in Madhya Pradesh. And as industry, we also looking forward for all the opportunities in this segment, whether it is dealer, distributor, whether it is charging stations, whether it is commercial vehicles and everything. It's a wonderful opportunity for all of us to part of this EV ecosystem. I personally thank on the behalf of Madhya Pradesh Chamber of Commerce, PhD Chamber of Commerce, to Shri Nikunj ji, who is a commissioner with urban development, to be present here. और उन्होंने यहाँ पर जो आज हमारे बीच में एक बहुत ही thought provoking और जो उनकी expectation है, I think with PhD Chamber of Commerce Madhya Pradesh and Ecra we can able to do that, and we have done it also. Like Ecra has presented its report on Madhya Pradesh EV things. So I think Nikunj sir, आपने जो हमसे expectation की थी उसकी शुरुआत हमने कर दी है. But thanks a lot that you are here with us on this on the short note with your busy schedule, because I met you on 2 days back and मुझे मालूम है आप कितने busy हैं और उसके बावजूद आप इस कार्यक्रम में पधारे. Thank you very much. I am also thankful to our Transport Commissioner for Mukesh Jain sir, that he has spare the time and especially came for our program. Thank you very much. I also thankful to especially to Mr. Bajpai sir, who is from Madhya Pradesh Urjaa Nigam and the sponsor to this program. That thank you sir, you are continuously supporting PhD Chamber of Commerce for this such type of initiatives which PhD is able to do in Madhya Pradesh. So thank you Bajpai sir, and we will be listening to you in our next technical session. I'm also thankful to all the dignitaries from our PhD Chambers head office, from Sanjeev Gupta ji, our Vice President, Shri Multani sir, Senior Vice President, Shri Multani sir, and also from the person who is Diwan sir from Ecra, who has presented a very nice presentation. I have taken a clips, and I definitely ask and request Mr. Diwan to share the presentation, because the details and the macroeconomics detail which he has shared on electronic vehicle is definitely a very useful thing for all of us. So thanks for that, and thank you again to Diwan sir and Ecra for the great report which you have published on EV. Similarly, I am thankful to all my colleagues, my co-chair Srimati Preeti Saluja, Yogesh Srivastava, and yes, my colleague and the secretarial officer and the backbone to this whole program, Mr. Aniruddha Dubey, for doing these things. I'm also thankful to everyone who is present here in this meeting, and look forward for more EV state and Madhya Pradesh for the first in this EV. And I think that we can take it forward like solar में हम बहुत आगे बढ़े, वैसे ही I think in EV also Madhya Pradesh will take a lead, and we will certainly work on that. Thank you everybody, and I miss somebody's name.
ड्रीम है प्रदीप जी, ये हमारा ड्रीम है कि मध्य प्रदेश में जितने भी व्हीकल्स अब दिखें आगे आने वाले समय में केवल ईवी दिखे. Then only it is going to be a successful
like Indore I'm seeing sir, lot of vehicles are coming, but Bhopal we have to do, and definitely we will work on it, and we have a good capacity, and we have the senior officials, and government is a very progressive in Madhya Pradesh. I must tell you that government is very progressive in Madhya Pradesh. Wherever we go for any initiatives, government is like a facilitator to all of us. So thank you again everyone who has present here. Thank you very much from
Great
the side
प्रदीप जी, आपने बहुत अच्छा कहा. जैसा मध्य प्रदेश भारत का दिल है, मैं एक ही लाइन कहना चाहता हूं निकुंज जी को भी, जैन साहब को भी. Such a dynamic officers we have in Madhya Pradesh. We are so grateful, and at the same time we are so thankful that under their leadership Madhya Pradesh is certainly going to be a fully EV state, and I am sure it is going to be the first state in India which is going to be fully EV state. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. from Delhi. I am very thankful to each one of you. And whenever, sir, I am there in Bhopal, I would love to meet physically with Nikunj as well as Jain Saab. Thank you very much, ladies. And now from here onwards, my colleague Puneet Jain will take over and then take the program forward. Over to you, Puneet. All yours.
Thank you so much.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to the next session, which will be a panel discussion on creating a conducive ecosystem for EV adoption in Madhya Pradesh. Now I invite Mr. Salil Gupta, our co-chairman of Power, RE and AE Committee, PHDCCI, to take over the session, and then he will invite Mr. Ashish Modani for moderating the panel discussion. Over to Mr. Salil Gupta ji.
Thank you, Puneet ji. Very good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to the panel discussion session on creating a conducive ecosystem for EV adoption in the state of Madhya Pradesh. There has been a major technological transformation witnessed in the automotive industry globally, including India, to combat air pollution. Huge efforts have been made to identify alternative fuels by way of developing eco-friendly advanced technologies, which can offer most competitive and value for money proposition to the intending consumers in the market. Electric vehicles, EVs for short, offer alternate mobility options that help to minimize the adverse effects of vehicle running on petrol and diesels. Technological advancements are making EVs more attractive to the consumers due to the increasing convenience and have already started to penetrate the market in various Indian cities. Given the established auto industry in Madhya Pradesh, the recent interest in EVs and expected growth in transport demand make MP an emerging state and possible leader in the EV manufacturing market in India, if a conducive ecosystem is created, that is. The success of adoption of EVs totally depend on the performance of various stakeholders in the cycle, which, for example, awareness of citizens, support from national and local governments, and technological advances. State governments can facilitate EV by a range of interventions, including mandates and incentives that promote investment in development local EV targets. As already said by Mr. Srivastava, charging infrastructure and parkings, EV parkings, priority for the vehicles, facilitating in PPPs and more subsidies for buyers. In this session, we have a panel discussion, as I said, on creating a conducive ecosystem for EV adoption in MP, which will be moderated by Mr. Ashish Modani. Ashish is a vice president at Ecra and has been with the agency for over 12 years now. Based out of Pune, he is a part of the corporate ratings group and covers the automotive sector. Over the years, he's worked on credit assignments across various sectors like automobile, agri-engineering, poultry and power sector. He's worked on various credit assignments for leading companies rated by Ecra and has been instrumental in developing Ecra's research offerings in the automobile and the poultry sector. He holds a BTech degree in Electronics and Communication Engineering from the National Institute of Technology, Calicut, and an MBA from the Narsi Munji Institute of Management Studies, Mumbai, and has an aggregate work experience of over 14 years. I now invite Mr. Ashish Modani to moderate the panel discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gupta. Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Let's take this forward. I would like to give a brief introduction to my eminent panelist, Mrs. Nidhi Singh Rajput, CEO of Jabalpur Smart City Project, Government of Madhya Pradesh. She has been instrumental in making Jabalpur one of the most appreciated smart cities across India. We have Mr. Firoj Meshram, Chief General Manager, Madhya Pradesh Power Management Company Limited, which is also the nodal agency in Madhya Pradesh for implementation of technical as well as performance standard and protocols from time to time, laid down by Ministry of Power and Central Electricity Authority. We have Mr. Shri Surendra Vajpayee, Executive Engineer, Madhya Pradesh Urjaa Vikas Nigam Limited, who has over 37 years of experience, and he has been working over the last 3 decades with state government for promotion of new and renewable energy, as well as energy management. He has presented over 50 technical papers on renewable energy and energy efficiency. We also have Mr. Varun Chaturvedi, who is the founder and CEO of Voltix, one of the leading EV charging infrastructure company in India. Established in 2017, Voltix currently operates over 200 charging points across India, and it has planned to add over 12,000 charging points in the next 5 years. We also have Mr. Muralidharan. He's a mechanical engineer from IIT Kharagpur and MBA from IIM Bangalore. Prior to this, he was president of Lucas India Services Limited. Mr. Muralidharan has spent over 3 decades in the auto industry and viewed as auto and aftermarket guru, and now as a mobility system specialist. He has several accolades and recently inducted into a Hall of Fame at World Auto Forum. We also have Mr. SANYOG TIWARI, who is the founder and CEO of Urjaa Private Limited, which to give his perspective on the charging station and swapping solutions. We have Mr. Shailesh Agrawal, CEO of Super Eco Automotive Company LLP, to give a perspective from the OEM side. And we have Mr. Tushar Bharadwaj, who is the founder of Shri Urjaa Technology, to share perspective of the renewable energy. A warm welcome to everyone. I will request participants to give their initial perspective in the 5 to 7 minutes on how EV penetration can be accelerated in Madhya Pradesh and how we can develop an entire EV ecosystem in MP. Subsequently, we will have another round to have another more pinpointed questions in your specific domain. I would like to open the forum with a question for Mrs. Rajput, a CEO of Smart City. How, as a smart city administrator, government policies and support can play an instrumental role in EV adoption in MP? Over to you, ma'am.
Well, I don't think she's not there. Maybe you can start with Varun regarding
Puneet, I think she is there, but she has joined as an attendee. The CEO of Jabalpur Smart City is showing us an attendee there.
Okay, I will just make her the panelist.
Let me escalate to the comment.
Yeah, so meanwhile, I will just shift to Varun, and then I will ask questions ultimately to Mr. Meshram and how EV charging infrastructure can be rolled out in MP. So over to you, Varun. How we can accelerate the EV charging, because EV charging is a big bottleneck for the industry, and charging infrastructure is at a very, very nascent stage in India. Like what Shamsher told, what we do, what India has done in the last few years, India, China do it on a daily basis. So we have lot of ground to cover. So what is your view on that, and how can we accelerate this EV charging in India, and especially in MP?
Yeah, so thank you for inviting and such a great event to bring all the stakeholder on common platform, because that is more required so that proper information should be flow across the system. And coming to the EV charging infrastructure, it is the basic requirement for the faster adoption of EVs. So yes, as a India, we are at very nascent stage in terms of EV adoption and number of EV charging stations, because we started 2016-17, then there are lots of work done on the policy framework, standards, and all those things. So from government side, now there is a huge push coming from central government, then state government, and that is very encouraging for all the stakeholder, EV OEM, charging infrastructure provider like us, and other, even at the end of the day, it is going to benefit the user. Now the charging infrastructure component, see, we as a India is having, infrastructure challenge, looking to big geography, then existing, electrical infra, because ultimately we are going to draw power from the grids and the locations. So we have to rather than going conservative, we have to adopt some approach, like if home charging, personal user is more prominent to use a home charger if they have a parking facility. If they don't have, definitely like in Mumbai, Pune or Delhi, lots of people park nearby area or on the roadside, so definitely they require a public charging station. But on the new government laws, building laws, like mandating all the new installation, even old installation, they have to, a good number of 20% is the target, but yeah, they are having, their own target to add charging stations inside the parking premises. So home charging is the one segment where personal segment can, charge at their home. Even now the corporate offices, like you are working to any place, so they are also developing such kind of facility, and their these slow chargers are more useful because people are going to stay 8 to 10 hours at office or overnight charging at home. So that is the one segment we have to promote. The building law should be implemented in very proper way, so that people take it seriously. Now lots of people are inclined towards the EVs adoption. They want to buy EVs, but their major challenge of first question is really requirement of charging infrastructure. But same time we have to little give a proper information. Until unless you are not traveling within highways or city to city, home charging or slow charger is going to suffice your charging requirement, because personal segment requirement is hardly 20-30 kilometer daily run. Now when it comes to a commercial fleet operator or a commercial user, definitely they always require a fast charger, because their runs are having 200-300 kilometer, either fleet segment, either delivery guys and all those things. So public commercial charging stations, so if I talk about, there are three components. One is the locations. Strategic location, what I believe, being a charging infrastructure operator, it should not be a standalone system that we can put at a raw land and then somebody will come and charge, because what he will do during the idle time. So strategic location selection is very important to putting a commercial or fast charging station. Like if I give example, malls, highway hotels, even offices, lots of MNCs, they are using good number of fleets for employee transportation. If right now we are serving those MNCs, so during the idle time they are charging their vehicles, and that is suffice their requirement. They need not to go especially for charging to somewhere else in the public domain and then invest time to get charged. So that is one. Then malls, highway hotels, as I mentioned. So strategic location, getting the location will be a crucial for a charging infrastructure development. If I go for a new land and then developing amenities like coffee shop and all those things, so that is a different business case, but high capex, because charging infrastructure is, commercial charging infrastructure is a high capex business. Typically on an average 15 to 16 lakhs is required for hardware like fast charger of 50 kilowatt, then Bharat DC, then some electrical infra. So these things always required economics, cost economics. So for that, charging infrastructure should not be standalone. It should be with a kind of amenities. As I mentioned, strategic location is going to play a crucial role. Then the second requirement is the DISCOM connection. So that is where the preferential EV tariff is required, because we cannot operate with a commercial, then tariff will go on the high. Like commercial rate is suppose 10 rupees, 12 rupees, and EV tariffs right now, as per EV policy, each government is giving rates like 6 rupees, 4 rupees, depending on state to state. So getting that, we required a separate EV meter connections from the DISCOM, and that is where little information flow should be to the DISCOM end, means the distribution center, those who are allotting the connection. Sometimes what we are facing issue, they don't know the policy. They don't know exactly how the flow is going to happen. So we are spending good amount of time during the execution. And third component is the charging infrastructure component, that is hardware, software, and the services. So that is, we are fine. That is as per government is standard. Government already mandated 3-4 standards to go with that installation: Bharat AC, DC, CCS2, CHAG demo, and type 2 charger. So overall, the charging infrastructure numbers are right now less. Of course, these are not what everybody is expecting, but same time we have to think, we have a execution challenges on the practical side. It is not the numbers. We required a land, locations, then power connectivity, and then it's a combination of use case, because if everybody is putting 100 charging station, any operator, and the footfall is very less. So again, it's a chicken egg theory. People are always thinking on that, but progressively both should work in that way. It is not you flooded any city with the charging station and numbers are very less, but same time it should be strategic location. Start with like metros, as mentioned in earlier discussion, some malls, area, highway, hotel, strategic location, because EV need not to be charged every 25 kilometer. Range are right now 250 kilometer. In coming time, more high range EVs are expected to come. So overall, it's a balanced approach. We see it as a balanced approach with a strategic installation. Right now, where the demand is coming, we should facilitate. Like personal EVs, all EVs come with a home charger, like they are giving as a accessories. So if they can install in their houses, so their day-to-day requirement of charging is suffice. Then the corporates, because they have a parking, they have ample amount of parking, they can easily install facility for charging their employees, even for their fleet transportation. And then on the public commercial domain, it is start with the strategic highways, then on the strategic location, and with that slowly the numbers will increase, and then the charging infrastructure numbers will also increase. Lots of government entity, private players are working, but the problem is that most of the time we start comparing with the China and Europe and all this thing. Say they took almost 10 years to reach out that number. It is not within a 1 day or 1 year they took this. We are at that level right now. It is on the taking the pace. Everybody is talking about EV. So charging infrastructure required some time. Definitely on a higher pace. Government is now pushing. All the stakeholder is doing. So, but it will be on a balance approach.
So I will take your 3 points. Basically, you're talking about strategic location. You're talking about the competitive tariff, and you're talking about the facilitation of hardware and software and the implementation of that.
Yes.
So I will take this question on the DISCOM connection to Mr. Meshram. Like, as a policy maker, how can you provide a competitive tariff to a EV charging infrastructure? And how can, because initially, sir, like what Varun rightly told, that it's very difficult for someone to become a competitive, or a standalone charging supplier company may not be financially viable. So by competitive, giving a lower tariff, how can you facilitate that particular arrangement?
Good afternoon, Ashish ji. We have already given the tariff structure in our tariff order issued by Honorable Commission. There is two tariff, one for LV electric vehicles and second for HV electric vehicles. The rates are given 5.9 rupees per kWh rate is determined by Honorable Commission for HV electric connection, and 6 rupees energy charges are there for LV electric charging station. And as far as the fixed charges are concerned, 100 rupees per kVA fixed charges are kept by Honorable Commission. Actually, we were proposing 50 rupees per kVA, but Honorable Commission did not approve it, and it is now 100 rupees per kVA. But in future, looking to the demand of the operators, we will definitely reduce it. Okay.
And sir, generally EV charging companies or EV charging providers have faced a lot of issues in getting clearances from the government bodies, especially from electricity departments, where they do face certain challenges. So how can we accelerate it and make it much more conducive, and basically say ease of doing business again for Madhya Pradesh?
Okay, Mr. Ashish, we have already nominated 3 nodal officers in each company. There is Mr. Patidar in Indore, Mrs. Misra at Bhopal, and Mr. Kulkarni at Jabalpur. They will look after all the problem of the operators, and we will provide the electric connection as soon as possible. If they feel any difficulty, they can contact with me. I will try to solve the problem of the operators immediately. Okay. And we are at present, we are giving the priority to the operators. If they apply for the connection, we will give the connection within 48 hours after their payment and completing the other formalities. As per our policy, we will serve the connection after within 48 hours. There is no problem of availing supply.
So that is very encouraging. 48 hours of turnaround time. and I think
Yes,
Varun will be very happy.
After making payment and other formalities.
No, sir, two questions I just want to ask because I am operator. First thing is the fixed charges should waived off because right now there is no utilization. Okay, we are taking the pain of investment.
Varun, I think we can we can take use of everyone.
You are correct. Actually, in the next year, we will propose at least 50 rupees per kVA, just 50% of at present rate. At present, 100 rupees per kVA is there. We will propose 50 rupees per kVA in coming year. At present, our cost average billing rate in NP for the electric vehicle is 6.5 rupees per kWh at present, which is less than our average billing rate of the total state.
Okay, thank you, sir. And this 48 hours turnaround time is really appreciable because if that happens, I think
if they feel any difficulty in getting connection, they may contact with me anytime.
Okay, now my another question is with from Mr. Muralidharan. He is an auto industry expert. Sir, how can we attract companies in Madhya Pradesh, and how can we develop an entire ecosystem here? Like, do you think that we need a capital subsidy here, or how can we develop the entire ecosystem from an auto supplier vendor ecosystem point of view and EV infrastructure point of view? But you are not audible. You are on mute. Yeah.
Even now, I'm not audible?
You are audible now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ashish, for your question. I think you've hit the nail on the head. In states like MP, which has a strong infrastructure for auto, any new entrant, be it EV, be it hybrid, be it whatever alternate fuel, will face challenges of job opportunities and all other kinds of opportunities until and unless we take an extremely collaborative approach. This collaborative approach can be in 3 or 4 different areas. Number one, the ancillaries. Yes, the forged casting parts may reduce, but at the same time, the stamped parts, the plastic parts, the aluminum parts all have a certain demand, which is significantly more in the case of electric vehicles. So the same plants in Pithampur can be motivated to start manufacturing stamped plastic aluminum parts, which will be needed. And keep in mind that most of the EV manufacturers, be it Ather, they're manufactured in Hosur, Tamil Nadu, or be it similar companies that are all made in India only. So there's a domestic demand. Oems, for example, is made in Rajasthan. So there's a certain domestic demand. Now, second, coming back to the point which is most important to any consumer, which is the EV infrastructure. I think we can keep talking about it the whole day. But the collaborative approach there is the existing two-wheeler mechanics who feel they will lose their business because of EV can be motivated to become charging stations. Many of these people deal in big companies anyway, so the basic infrastructure of DISCOM power supply is already available. Many of them, not all, but many of them. So they can be motivated to have a fast charger. A fast charger can charge in just 1 hour, 1 hour, 15 minutes for a 100-kilometer run. And these chargers are available, not at the 50 lakhs, but at substantially lower prices. So by taking the two-wheeler mechanics along, it will be possible for the end user, say in an Indore or a Bhopal or a Gwalior or a Jabalpur, to know where he goes, the Ramu where he goes to get his two-wheeler repaired is also the same Ramu who will charge the two-wheeler electric vehicle for him. So this could be the second major way of involvement. First is component supplier, and second is EV charging. Yes, now you can add a rider to your question.
No, I would like to take what you are saying, that when mechanics can become a charging point. I will take that question to Mr. Vajpayee, who is the part of Madhya Pradesh Urjaa Vikas Nigam, because that also falls a little bit in his domain also. So what is, sir, your view on this, and how can we accelerate EV charging penetration? Because as per Ecra's study, we say that generally a two-wheeler owner travels less than 40 kilometers in a day, and they can charge their vehicle in their home or in their office. So they don't need a public charging infrastructure per se. What is a public charging infrastructure is required is largely for cars and buses. So buses will be largely in the depot where they can get charged in the overnight, and they will fly around 250 kilometers in a day with the intra-city movement. And for cars, they can there is a significant scope for improvement, and we have sitting in the center of India where almost all major national highway passes through MP. So there is a significant scope for setting up a EV charging infrastructure. So Mr. Vajpayee, I'd like to your view how we can accelerate that thing. And basically, any car which has to travel from north to south has to pass through MP. So that needs a charging point in MP. So how can we facilitate that?
Thank you, Ashish. As you rightly said that we need a charging infra, especially for the buses who passes through the state of Madhya Pradesh. You must have heard in the morning session that our Commissioner UADD, Shri Nikunj sir, has clarified that we are in process to establish 230 plus charging station in and around Bhopal, Indore and Jodhpur. And based on the experience of those charging stations, because you may be aware that as long as the quantity of electrical vehicle is not much, this charging will not be putting charging station will not be a profitable business. So based on the experience of these charging station, we will surely make a plan to cover the entire state of Madhya Pradesh through this highway charging station. Coming back to question of Mr. Muralidharan's, charging for two-wheelers, you rightly said that cities like Bhopal or Indore are two-tier cities in the state of Madhya Pradesh. A scooter owner or two-wheeler owner is hardly supposed to travel 40-50 kilometers a day, going to his work and coming back to his home. So if the charging infra can be developed at the corporate level, at the corporate offices and corporate establishments, and I don't think there will be any need of putting charging station with the service providers or mechanics. But yes, I can take out a point from Mr. Muralidharan's this view. We can surely think of putting charging station for three-wheelers, which is mostly used for last mile connectivity. Because in entire spectrum of EV charging, the basic utilization of EV vehicles, which is most popular in the country as far as in the state, is the EV three-wheeler, which has been used for the last mile connectivity. So if we can think of pulling those mechanics for EV charging for three-wheelers, will be more useful as compared to EV charging for two-wheeler vehicles. Thank you.
Sir, one question on this. Let's say earlier we have seen when the mobile revolution come in India, a normal kirana store has also become a SIM store. So yeah. For this, let's say if someone wants to get their vehicle charged in a nearby shop or a nearby garage, this tariff-related transaction that should be eased out, right? Because now if they want to bill it, there should not be any constraint. Earlier there was a constraint where that sale of electricity is not allowed. So
yeah, this for sure. As Mesram sir said, there is a separate tariff for e-vehicle charging and some flat rate also. So for these kind of charging station, we need to, our electricity department need to provide some certification that yes, it's a legal EV charging station. Number one. Number two, at the same time, these kind of mechanic shops or small charging station must have adequate space to accommodate those vehicles because it takes time, at least minimum an hour or so, even for top up. That much space is required to be there in those mechanic shops. Yeah.
Sure, sir. My next question is with Mr. SANYOG TIWARI, who is also linked with this entire EV charging commentary. So, his company provides solution for the charging station and also for swapping station. So,
Mr. Tiwari, do you see any swiping related possibility where?
So basically, from EV user standpoint, we believe that there are 3 E's which will drive the ecosystem. One is economy, second is electricity, and third is energy. And we also believe that seeing the current ecosystem, it has to be done in phase wise. We cannot go in a market in full fledged when market itself is seeing and observing the trend. If you see, the current driver was a 3-wheeler who drives the electric mobility in India all around the cities, and these 3-wheelers are specifically known for the last mile connectivity. So if you see, and when it comes to commercialization of these vehicles, they need to be a rapid charge. They cannot wait for anywhere for just for half an hour, 45 minutes, or 1.5 hours. This will somewhere impacting their economic earning in a daily wise. And so we believe, and we built a solution behind this and bought a battery swapping mechanism for these 3-wheelers. We also got engaged with other panelists were suggesting the mechanics and kirana shop owner and these type of people. So we also engaged the people of these type who had an existing business in city and wants to explore the opportunity in these fields. We have also done a study on these terms where we studied the psychology and also the their driving behavior of these 3-wheelers and 2-wheeler people. So if you will be very amazed to know this 3-wheeler, when there was no such opportunity available in public infrastructure, they used to take a 2-day 2 trips for a drive, starting from 7 a.m. in the morning to 12 a.m. 12 in afternoon, and come back and charge for 4 to 5 hours, and their battery get charged for let's say 60 to 70 kilometers a day, and again comes back to road and drive. So the whole ecosystem runs behind the battery and the energy sector. So my concern and my point would be, if we would able to figure out how the ecosystem can be best benefited in terms of the infrastructure support, would be helpful. And I also want to have your view, wants to take your views on the type of subsidy and the GST model we have currently in city. I'll want to explain you with an example. If somebody buys a wheeler with a battery, he has to give a 5% GST. Whereas if somebody buy a battery, after the battery gets degraded, he has to give 18% GST. So these type of gap is somewhere which is giving a pain to a consumer. I hope, Ashish ji, I have answered your query.
Yeah, that is true. I think the battery swapping is a viable option in the commercial space, especially in 3-wheeler and the small commercial vehicle space. And that's what we are also, our discussion with various OEMs also suggest. But from an MP's point of view, what is your opinion? How can this solution can accelerate, and how your company, or let's say the battery swapping can be a good solution for the users in MP?
Yeah, so it has to be, you have to involve a current stakeholder who are already doing business in market. You have to involve it. You have to involve the Swiggy, Zomato, Flipkart, and Amazon to switch to electric and switch to these vehicle and these the contractor who provide vehicle to these big distributor. You have to pitch to them and explain them the benefits of how the economic benefit they can gain if they switch to EVs. And the concern point for them is same, charging, which can be solved by swapping, which we all know. So these are some of the accelerators, including the current stakeholder in the market. We can include them. We can include the e-commerce market, so that the viability, the business viability can be increased in market, and other people can also jump into the same.
Okay, my next question is to Mr. Shailesh Agrawal. Is he connected? Mr. Agrawal?
No, Mr. Agrawal is not connected.
And okay, so Mr. Tusharjit Bharadwaj?
Yes,
Yeah, he is there. He's
Yes, sir.
Yeah, hi, Mr. Bharadwaj. So you are in
Hello,
the
sir.
renewal space. So when you're talking about the entire puzzle of electric vehicle, it's not complete without putting your renewable energy in the picture. So you being a supplier or in a domain of renewable energy, so how can you provide such support, and what is your view? How can we accelerate EV adoption in Madhya Pradesh?
Firstly, I'll start with that. I was reading an article yesterday wherein the Indian government has given the green signal to a landmark rule. And in that, in an attempt to attract more people to switch to EVs, the central government has suggested that they should scrap the registration fees of electric vehicles. So I feel that that is something which is a good, I would say, initiative when it comes to electric vehicles. And when we talk about renewable energy, we've been we started as a solar EPC company. So what we think is that it is very useful, as we all know that India has almost 300 sunny days. So why not use that source of energy into something which can be used for charging stations? And when we talk about Madhya Pradesh particularly, so we know that Madhya Pradesh is the second largest it's the second largest state of the country, and it covers around 9.5% of the total area. And what I feel is that I was also reading the Madhya Pradesh electric vehicle policy, which was framed in 2019. So if we talk about that, I had noted several points wherein like how can we increase the EV adoption in specifically in Madhya Pradesh. So I wrote that to drive large-scale adoptions of EVs and maximizing the reduction of vehicle emissions, the policy which was framed should focus the attention on incentivizing the purchase and promotion of electric vehicles with charging and battery swapping infrastructure of private and public shared transport. And the second point is that it should create a skilled workforce and build next generation transportation infrastructure using electrical vehicles to everything in every other platform. Like when we talk about incentives for like two-wheelers, the first 15,000 electric two-wheelers or total electric two-wheelers in 5 years, whichever is less, will be charged 1% motor vehicle tax. This was very good policy which I read. It was one of the points in the policy which I read. The second one was that the vehicle registration fees will be exempted for around 22,500 electric two-wheelers or total electric two-wheelers in 5 years, whichever is less. And we all know that public transport plays a major role when it comes to EV adoption, because maximum of the people use public transports to travel to their offices or to their workplaces or anywhere in the country. So like, for example, there's one very small example like shared e-rickshaws. So what we can do is that the first 5,000 shared e-rickshaws or total shared e-rickshaws in 5 years, whichever is less, will be charged 1% of the motor vehicle tax. And same, vehicle registration fees will be exempted for 7,500 shared e-rickshaws. And then we talk about the
Tushar, I think that policy, when you're talking about 22,000 two-wheeler, that 22,000
Right.
two-wheeler is less than what we sell in a month. And we're
Correct.
talking about that to be spread over the 5 year. So isn't that the number
Right.
quite low?
No, that's what I'm saying, that I've given you that 22,000 is one number and 5 years is the another number. Like whatever comes in first, like we all know that we sell more than 22,000 vehicles a month. So certainly this will be one picture. So that is what I was saying, that I was going through the policy which the Madhya Pradesh government drafted for electric vehicles. And there was the point where I read that this is something that we should work upon, because 22,000 is a very less number when it comes to electric vehicles. And when we talk about promoting electric vehicles in a state, we should focus on bigger numbers, because when we are pushing people towards it, like I'll talk about other states also. For example, the government of Delhi, what they did was that they introduced electric vehicles in their own convoy. So that was something which, yeah.
Tusharjit, we were expecting to hear something that how RE can play a role in charging the EV. I think that is a subject, that is a point which you need to elaborate.
Okay.
If I'm not wrong.
So, no, that's fine, sir. So when we talk about renewable energy, as I said that we should focus on using, like I told you, that India has around 300 sunny days. So why not use those 300 sunny days and create charging stations which can use those solar energy principles and can help in charging the electric vehicles. and probably setting up various charging stations in different parts of the city. For example, Bhopal, Jabalpur, where we can get a good amount of solar energy, and that electricity which is generated from solar energy can be used in charging the electric vehicles. What I feel is that
Tusharji,
yeah.
Can you just share that? Are you talking of centralized RE station or decentralized station at every charging point? If you can clear on this point, we'll appreciate your views.
Surely, sir. There is also one more thing which we can talk about is that we all are aware of microgrid, how microgrid works. So what we can do is we can have different charging stations, and we can have a decentralized process in which we can transfer energy from one microgrid to another, which can also help in charging the electric vehicles. Like, for example, if we have a charging station if a company has a charging station in Indore, and if the same company has another charging station which is like 10 kilometers away, so what we can do is that we can have a transfer of energy, and that transfer of energy can be monitored by a system known as microgrid, wherein we can have the details of the transactions, details of the energy transfers, and similarly, we can have the details of the monetary funds which are being transferred, and we can have tariffs also with this. So what I feel is that we should focus on something that is very important, and I feel that currently, as one of our panelists also said, that we should focus on the battery swapping. That is one thing which I also feel, and the other thing is that we should also focus on retrofitting. Retrofitting is also, like, it has one of the major advantages. The existing electric vehicles vehicles in the state should they should also get a chance to be converted into electric vehicles, because the government has set a tenure of 10 years for diesel vehicles and 15 years for petrol vehicles. And a lot of retrofitting is happening. And I feel that this is something which we should look upon and we should focus, because that is something which is new in the market, and one should have various policies for retrofitting.
Fair point, Tusharji. I would like to take this opportunity to again ask a question, Mr. Muralidharan, to take the industry's perspective. So when we're talking about EV adoption, you need an entire ecosystem. You're talking about you need an OEM's presence also over there. We have some units in Indore, Pithampur, and Devas belt in MP. But how to attract investment here? How to attract OEMs like Ola or Ether here and ask them to set up a factory in Madhya Pradesh? Because if they come in, that will have a rub-off impact on the other stakeholders also, and everything will fall in place. So how to do that?
Okay, I would answer your question as an entire ecosystem and go stage by stage. First is for components I had mentioned earlier. Focus on certain kinds of components, example, plastics, example, Shri mentioned earlier, and it continues, aluminum parts, stamp parts. This will make it easier for the vehicle assembler, that he doesn't have to go shopping for components all over the country. He has components next door. For this, a place like Pithampur is already very well equipped. Second, see if you can attract a battery manufacturer. The battery manufacturers in this country are largely lead. So if you can get a lithium-ion manufacturer in or around Pithampur, with the incentives given for a normal manufacturing facility, the lithium-ion battery manufacturer can also set up shop. After that, automatically the TVSs and the Heros and the Bajajas will come there to set up an assembly plant. The route is bottom up via components, including batteries. Second, talking of an ecosystem, I just want to add a little more to this battery swapping. But whilst no doubt having strategic locations at corporate for swapping, etc., works, the normal two-wheeler owner is not a guy who lives in big corporates or in big malls or goes there. He's a guy who lives in small towns, he lives in bleak-ass towns, and he's a traditional Luna or a TVS moped owner. And he will go for battery swapping, which is actually more economical for a two-wheeler. And in terms of ecosystem, every Kirana shop, just like in the older days, an STD shop was in every street. A normal Kirana shop can stock a battery swapper and sell it. And any of the existing battery guys can charge it. MP basically has just 50, 60 districts. So if in each district, you can set up a battery charging, recharging unit and have a swapping way by which the swapped batteries go up to the kirana shops, you automatically develop an ecosystem for the entire state. And once you develop it, all the two-wheeler guys go in the smaller towns. They'll be in Katni, they'll be in Chinchwad, they'll be in Khargone, they'll be in Ujjain, and they will start using it. So it has to be a multi-pronged collaborative approach. Over to you, Ashish.
Ashish, you are on
You
mute.
are on mute.
Sorry. So my question is, Mr. Vajpayee, like how will you like to respond to the various commentary from the panelists regarding the EV charging? So how can government facilitate that particular thing? And I am really impressed by Mr. Meshram's comment that they are talking about 48 hours turnaround time with the 3 people deployed across region to take care of that. So like, what is your view? How can we talk about from first question is on the EV charging, and second question, if you can give certain from the government perspective, how can we attract investment also?
Yes, as Mr. Meshram, my senior, is rightly said that we have a system in place. In MP, we have 3 distribution companies, and each distribution companies have a nodal officer, which is supposed to take care of the EV charging infra developer point of view. And if at all, as he said, if the formalities are at place, the due diligence has been completed, we are committed to issue the connection within 24 hours. That's really a good initiative by our department. And second thing, as Mr. Tiwari and Mr. Muralidharan was talking about the swapping of battery. So in my understanding and in my experience, I think it is little difficult because, you know, swapping a battery model is a very common kind of arrangement looks if we look from a different perspective. But if we really try to achieve this on ground, it becomes very difficult because a lot of different type of manufacturers, different battery configurations, different type of batteries and their lives. This can only be achieved if the service provider is single and we have a same set of battery across all the model of segments like 2-wheeler, 3-wheeler or 4-wheeler, then probably swapping can be thought of. But as of now, in my understanding and my exposure, I think the decentralized distribution, decentralized establishment of charging infrastructure across the city. In first phase, we have taken up Indore, Bhopal and Jabalpur. All the highways interconnected and then probably within the city. In second phase, as Mr. Nikunj in the morning has elaborated that we'll be covering entire state, the charging infra. And we looked at the more and more electrical vehicle can be placed on the road, especially 3-wheelers, which is a backbone for last mile connectivity and which is really very useful. And if you look at the techno-economics, I mean, in Jabalpur, in areas like Bhopal, Indore, we have a good number of these last mile connectivity 3-wheelers are already in place and they are surviving on their own economics. So if any technology can survive on their own economics, this is the best signal. So 2-wheeler and 3-wheeler, I don't see any issue as far as their charging and their economics is concerned. But yes, 4-wheeler and buses and commercial trucks, we need to give more emphasis on charging infrastructure. We need to see more incentives in order to promote them and to achieve a carbonless transport driving system, as Shri Saab in the previous session has told. We are in process of all these initiatives and we are very keenly watching the outcome of our policy or outcome of our initiative to promote e-mobility in the state. Based on the outcome and based on the sessions by experts like this in this webinar, we will surely put up with the government to take a call and make a more favorable policy for the state to become a EV state in the country. Thank you, Mr. Ashish.
Sir, my one question with Mr. Meshram, like it's a very ambitious question. For the next, let's say, 3 years or 5 years down the line, what kind of charger density you are looking at? Let's say for every 5 kilometers you have a charger. It's a very ambitious thing. But if the government talks about an ambitious thing, at least they will reach very close to that. So if I ask you, Mr. Meshram, like what kind of charger you want to be on, let's say you're talking about NS3 or like the old Agra-Bombay highway, which almost crosses the state into two parts, or Jaipur-Jabalpur highway, which another dissects into two parts. What kind of density you would like to have on that particular highways?
Mr. Ashish, actually, as per policy, there should be one charging station after 25 kilometers on the both side of the highway. That is the policy decided by the government, and I hope that is more better. 25 kilometers is enough. And as far as the town is concerned, there is a guideline for 3 kilometer square area. There is a one charging station should be there at least. So as far as concerned, the Bhopal and Indore and Jabalpur, it will depend upon the their square area, how much charging station will be there as per the guidelines. 3 kilometer square area, there should be at least one charging station.
Sir, you must be aware that in India, land is a very contentious subject. So when talking about charging infrastructure and the land, getting an approval for that land and evacuation, it's a very
actually land issue is being dealt by Urban Development Department. Actually, Nikunj sir can explain on this issue. And as I know, the land has been issued to the REIL and NTPC, and MOE and LOE has been done by the Urban Department already. And out of that, 13 charging stations have been commissioned in our states, where 60 chargers have been commissioned, and it is working in the Bhopal and Indore city. And we hope we will increase the intensity in future.
So let's say if a player like Varun and SANYOG, they want to set up a charging station, because you are talking about the government one. So when the private parties want to set up a charging infrastructure or charging station, like how can government provide support and improve the turnaround time in that?
Actually, as per our policy, the state policy, we are giving a rebate on 25% on the infrastructure cost, which is a 1.5 lakhs to 10 lakhs maximum limit. And it depends upon the size of the charging station. And other incentives are being given by the other department. Yes, Mr. Vajpayee said the taxes are very less. 1% tax will be charged, and registration is free totally, and parking is also free for the electric vehicles. So these incentives are being already given by the state government, and in future we will again decide what can be done in the better way.
Are you planning to make it mandatory? Let's say for all the new societies or housing societies or new commercial establishment, they should have mandatory electric charger, so that at least some setup can all come up automatically going forward.
Actually, this is not my issue. It is the issue of urban development and housing department. I am looking only after the electric infrastructure, and as a state nodal agency, I am only coordinating with the other departments like transport department and urban department and Madhya Pradesh Urjaa Vikas Nigam and other discoms. Actually, this issue is being dealt by the urban department actually.
Okay, so I would like to take another question to Varun, because he is trying to implement charging across India. So what is your key challenge that you generally look at, and where do you need government support in that? Varun, over to you.
See, as of now, there are two things. First thing, because we are on a platform, so the subsidies or FAMEs which is coming, it should directly benefit it, because private players are not part of that EOI, because there is a different route. So we need a support on getting the subsidy, It is suppose the state government is giving some subsidy, so it should not be limited to RIL, NTPC. Whatever MOUs are required to sign, we are also ready to sign to get the location access and all those things. Suppose we from our effort, if we got those location, because we have our own network, so that is not a challenge. So second thing is as Mr. Meshram mentioned, so they are having nodal agency. That is really great. And we feel that change because we installed one charging station at their Indore, this polo ground. We have installed, so execution time was quite great. I think within 2-3 days they install I think it's a 100 kilowatt load, 80 kilowatt load something. So this is something we need support everywhere on the DISCOM perspective. And there are some 2-3 suggestions, maybe not discuss here. We will share with the respective agencies, like getting a meter and then NOC and other documentation to make it fast. But from government side, we are looking, first thing is the government places access, like urban development or this is smart city where we want to install the charging station. So we should also part of it. It's not only the government agencies get access, private players should get access. Second thing is the subsidy, if it is a subsidy applicable, so we should also a part of that. Rest on the execution, we have our own plan. We are not looking to install every 25 kilometer. We are looking at every 50 kilometer strategic location and all those things. Charging infrastructure as it's not an execution. I means once everything is on the place, execution or running is not a problem. Operation is not a problem. But getting installation, the turnaround time overall from getting a location access, DISCOM, and then the installation. So these three things need to be aligned together. Means information should be available to the urban, local urban, nodal agencies. Even this substation where we are getting the connection are applying for that. And then the other flow process. Rest, we are okay with that and we are executing the projects.
So means you are suggesting that there should be a single nodal agency for everything. Yes. You just go there and apply it. So at least you don't have to run from one agency to another agency, right?
Even there are agencies, but what we feel there are, information is not properly propagating on the drill down or bottom down, because we are working we are discussing at a common forum. But when it comes to execution, it is not every time I will reach to Mr. Meshram that I want a connection. I will reach to local, office. So they should aware that what are the really requirement. I'm not asking only on electricity board. I'm asking the nodal agency. They should also facilitate in terms of getting the parking access. Whatever comes with like Indore Municipal Corporation or Bhopal Smart Cities. So there also it should be uniform, so that see, it is a combined effort from government and private sector. It is not only government can do or only private sector can do, because ultimately the major challenge, the location, and then comes to the power connectivity. So these three, 2-3 things comes together, then only we can make it on a faster pace. Investment is not a challenge. Private players are ready to invest. Either they are ready to take a pain of, okay, ROI are late, not a problem. But some fixed charges, as I just requested, at least we should get rebate on fixed charges. Daily only 2-3 hours utilization we are not expecting. But initial sometime we should work, but that is separate, we can discuss. But these two challenges we required.
I think the government of Madhya Pradesh is very proactive. I think they are hearing all the inputs and they will definitely work on this.
Definitely.
Sanyog, I just want, if you are working on the battery swapping, what are the challenges you are facing in, and how many battery swapping you already have in MP?
Okay, so currently, just wanted to tell you that we are running from our own premises. We are running from one battery swapping point from our own premises and testing it, the technology part and battery part, and making it smarter. On other side, I heard the comment of Surin sir, where he shows his concern about different vehicles. Just wanted to bring bring in front of you that there are total 535 registered three-wheeler manufacturers in India, and out of which majority of them works on one standard. There are 5 to 10 players who are working for other standards, or let's say on a higher standard. So majority of things has already been into standardized. During these past 20 years, we were studying these vehicles, we were making a technology robust, we were studying how the behavior of driver is, how the battery abuse can be stopped. These are things we have studied, and technology is something which is helping us to minimize and de-risk these all facilities. And these three-wheeler or two-wheeler swapping point can be run from one premises. Like, let's say if somebody install a swapping station, he will be able to swap a two-wheeler battery and three-wheeler battery. But a two-wheeler driver won't come that occasionally, because he preferred charging at home, because as you are well aware that these vehicles are for 60-70 kilometer range. So when he prefer to go out of that, he might come to the swapping station, but not occasionally.
I think Mr. Vajpayee was commenting that it is not a blanket solution. It will be a mix of hybrid of battery swapping and the normal charging, because there are certain vehicle class which have a battery as a core technology. So they will generally try to avoid a charging thing. But there are certain vehicle, especially on the commercial mobility side, where on the two-wheeler, like the Swiggy's and Zomatos, and to the likes of three-wheeler, where there is a merit to look at the battery swapping and charging both. So I think that's the way that can be. Mr. Muralidharan?
Yes.
Again, my question, because you are an industry veteran, and we have a government officials over here, we have startups over here. So what is your suggestion for the industry, and how to take it forward, and how to, let's say, if we are at X level today in the EV charging, how can we make it 100 times maybe in the next 5 years? Because this industry is going to see an exponential growth. We are not going to see a linear growth going forward, right? So at one point of time, I'm talking from a
EV charging.
EV charging, sir.
Okay, then I would see, first point, I think MP is one of the most friendliest governments. Otherwise, places like Pithampur wouldn't have been there. And whilst we keep on asking MP government, I've also dealt with other governments, and I think this is always a very friendly, supportive. Second, if you talk of EV charging, what is also missing out is, can we manufacture EV charging equipment in MP on a very large scale? We keep on talking of setting up infrastructure, doing this, doing that, doing this, doing that. But if we make it almost like a small scale industry, say for a two-wheeler or for cars, and we make it, say, in places like Indore and Bhopal or in Pithampur, then it will be of huge, huge advantage. And to do this, whatever support is needed as an MSME, if MP government can provide, then it will take a quantum jump. Second, whilst a lot of money is spent in the R&D of batteries, a lot of money, lithium ion, lead acid, small size, the same amount of money, if it's made for chargers, battery chargers, then we can even have handheld chargers. Why were we looking for so many big infrastructure? Earlier, when diagnostics came and a vehicle moved from carburetor to multi-point fuel injection, people said multi-point fuel injection, common rail, you need a lot of equipment. Not anymore. Now you just have a smartphone scanner with data is done by Acetronic. Similarly, if an R&D effort can be made in MP, I'm saying MP again, R&D, because Volvo has a BS6 and beyond R&D center there. Look at the advancement in Pithampur itself. There's an advancement for tractors in Hoshangabad, right? So MP has a history of engineering R&D centers. So if an R&D center can be set up or supported, many companies will run there to set up battery charging equipment. So if we are going to look at, and people keep talking of China, China, China for this. China, the battery vehicles for two-wheelers are what Indians call scooterettes, the very small scooters. And they do not need that kind of charging time or that kind of charging equipment. They can be charged in some 25 minutes because they all run in 40 kilometers, 50 kilometers. Nobody even crosses 100 kilometers. So similarly, with the help of local R&D, and believe me, I am a strong believer in Jugaad. I do not think Jugaad is a bad word. I think the Indian Jugaad of doing startup enterprise with the help of local talent, if you can make low-cost battery chargers, then almost everywhere where you're pumping oil or you're filling air, all those places can become battery charging stations. So my request to the MP government, which has always been helpful, is two. One, have battery charging assembly stations almost at par with an MSME kind of facilities, or even more, not the FAME route, the MSME route. And second, have simple R&D centers so you have domestic handheld kind of chargers. Anybody can use. A small battery kirana shop can use, that kind of thing. Okay.
My last question is to Varun. So, and I really appreciate Mr. Mulidhara's point because that I really missed it on the charging equipment, because we talk about the OEM's perspective, the batteries perspective, but what about the charging equipment? So how can we have the assembly units or the manufacturing units in MP for charging units? So Varun, like, can you suggest some way out for that?
See, charging infrastructure itself having 5-6 domain. Okay, so one is as you mentioned is the first is the manufacturing, hardware manufacturing. So of course there are government is planning 2-3 types of ways to increase the density. One is the way is the low cost charging station that is mostly used for 2-wheeler, 3-wheeler, like you can install at within a street, but that cost will be below 10,000. That is where government is targeting, means central government, DSI is coming with DST is coming with a new guidelines. Okay, so that can be easily assembled and doable at any MSME level. Okay, I'm not saying it is a rocket science. It is a very small technology, only Bluetooth, Wi-Fi enabled. Now, when it comes to the car and this bus charger, so there is, these are DC fast charger. So their assembly line is required. So that is also doable. In government are attracting these kind of manufacturing unit in terms of rebate, subsidy, and all those things. It is a part of ecosystem. Same like EV manufacturing, we are attracting. Same way EV charging component manufacturer or EV charging equipment manufacturer. There are component as well. There are modules, there are display, there are contactor, there are guns, lots of things. Right now we are mostly dependent on the components from the China or Taiwan, but now we have started developing our own controllers. So these controllers require assembly units. So there are huge chances for establishing these local scale. I'm not asking whole charger. There might be component as well. There are opportunities, those who are currently supplying to IC engine components, they can switch to this component as well, because they are also fearing what will happen when EVs will dominate. So that is where these things and new startups, new SMEs can come also and get that facilitation. But yeah, it's required some R&D, some kind of efforts, and government facilitation. So I believe there are opportunities available in EV charging infrastructure. Now I given only one component, that is on the hardware. There could be an installer, there could be a software companies, because software is also a backbone of a commercial charging station. So it could be in Indore, it could be even, to be very frank, I am telling you, my software office is in Urjaa. So we are operating from there itself. So it is not like that. So then at the end of the day, overall CPU charge point operator. So there are various opportunities. MSMEs are backbone because it is not required on a large scale, development or big, premises or something like that. But yeah, altogether opportunities are available in ecosystem of whole EVs. Yes.
Thank you, Varun. So I would like to just take away a few points that we have discussed. I think there are some interesting concepts, at least which I was not aware of. One is regarding the two tariff structure and the government support for the kind of cost competitive tariffs that is there. And they are focused on 25, one charger per kilometer, 25 kilometer, which is very interesting. So even if we are able to achieve even 50 kilometer, I think we are good to go on highways. And if they are fast charger, I think there is enough scope for EV, even in the car segment in MP. What we're talking about the battery swapping, again, the battery swapping is a very good option. It is generally a viable option in the commercial mobility, in the two-wheeler and in the three-wheeler space. That can also be looked at. And one very interesting takeaway from Mr. Meshram is that they are focusing on turnaround time, because generally this is something which we talk about in the private sector, the very efficient turnaround time. If they're talking about in the government domain, I think that is very impressive. And the one thing that really needs to get accelerated is some kind of capital subsidy and support, because the entire EV ecosystem has a lot of points which can be localized. And we have a skilled manpower. We have a lot of education institution in MP. And personally, I also hail from MP. So I have also personal affection for Madhya Pradesh to make it a EV powerhouse. So if the industries comes over there, it grows. I think it's tremendous opportunities are there. And what very good thing for EVs is now everybody is starting from zero. So earlier there were certain industrial zone who already have a very lot of support base, and let's say for a likes of car, they have a engine supplier or a component supplier, the gearbox supplier already in the particular domain. But in EV, everybody started from zero. So when everybody is starting from a fresh start, then there is a lot of opportunity for all the stakeholders to jump in and get the bigger pie. And that's where I think the MP has a very strong opportunity and a position. They can leverage on their centralized location in India, where they can access on north, south, east, west, anywhere. It's an equal distance. And we see a lot of potential over there. Over to you, Mr. Vajpayee. I think there are a lot of questions on the technical side. So I would like you to answer those questions on that, on the Q&A box.
Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ashish and panelists, for a very informative and interesting discussion. Is Mr. Diwan would like to give his final comments? Okay. So now, Ashish, can you take some questions? There are some questions in the chat box.
Yeah, definitely. So I will take that question. The conversion of existing bus is cost-effective short gestation. Is conversion allowed in MP? So I think there are certain regulations also. It's not direct conversion is not a very feasible option, especially for the larger vehicle. So that needs to be looked out, and there are several technicalities and regulations that they need to comply. So it may not be a very viable option to look at, especially to start from the bus, which is a very, very capital-intensive product. Then there is another, what are the regulations for providing charging station for apartment and societies? So I would like to Mr. Meshram or Mr. Vajpayee to answer that question.
In fact, as Meshram sir said, that there is a provision in the NBC itself that new buildings with certain area, I mean specified area, need to put some e-charging facility in their construction. And that has been incorporated in the state as well. But I'm not very much sure. I'll have to check with the UIDD department. But this for sure that new buildings are going to have this kind of arrangement, this kind of charging infrastructure, and parking as well. Parking as well, they have to keep reserve for vehicles. That is for sure. That is there in NBC. So it has to be followed in the state as well.
So can consumer look for the lower property tax, sir? If they have charging?
At this point of time, I cannot make any comment. But how long? I mean, see, every new initiative ultimately ends with some property tax rebate and this thing. So how long? How will those departments will survive? So it's a matter of change. We should accept that it's for the betterment of our tomorrow.
Fair point, sir. Then there is a question: is the state looking at including E3-wheeler also for urban facilities? I think that is already included.
Yeah.
And that is part and parcel of the scheme. So that is there. Yeah. Does MP government has any policy to promote local business entity already active in the EV charging solution? I think that is partially addressed by our panelist. the government is supporting. It's not only about EV specific. I think they are the policy is very comprehensive. They're talking about the incentive. Even if you are setting up a unit for textile or for auto or for electric vehicle, they are providing certain support mechanism for that. I think they are promoting local support, and the focus is on improving turnaround time. I think in the state of Madhya Pradesh, the government has taken various actions to improve the turnaround time for consumers. So I think it's there. EV industry shall become a consumer of electricity, adding to the already high demand. Yeah, so that is question for Mr. Meshram. Like, there is a possibility that this kind of, there could be a load on the grid. So how is MP the grid in MP is able to handle that kind of load, maybe 5 years or 10 years down the line?
Yes, Mr. Ashish, actually we are planning to give the tariff for 5 years constantly. It will not increase in future. Whatever tariff is being given by the MPRC, it will be same for the next 5 years. We will not increase any tariff in future.
Okay. And Mr. Vajpayee or Mr. Meshram, like there's one question related to the grid. So let's say if there's a lot of electric vehicles, so what could be the impact on the grid, maybe 5 years or 7 years down the line? Because this demand is quite variable, electric vehicle. So what kind of impact that can be there on the grid because of that EV demand?
Actually, Mr. Vishal, MP is a surplus state, and we are at present about 20% capacity is surplus. 20,000 megawatt installed capacity is there, and our maximum demand is about 15,000 megawatt. So there is no question of demand side. We can meet the demand of the EV vehicles in future, and there is no problem in the coming 5 years. We are surplus state, and we can manage easily.
Fair point,
Ashish, I just want to add in this question. See, government is mandating for any commercial charging station, it should connect it to the network. Network means the software, and all the data need to be shared with the discoms and the nodal agency. And that is where government is planned to see a next 5 year demand. So there are possibility of grid balancing and all those steps, but in time frame. It is not immediately, because right now we don't have those number of charging station.
Yeah,
so
as of now, I'm Vajpayee. As of now, we don't foresee this kind of grid unbalancing issues kind of thing.
Yes.
Once we reach to a certain, we achieve certain milestones, probably we'll look into this matter, and by the time some arrangements will surely be in place.
Yes, and that is where government mandating for all the operator. So keep with those kind of stuff so that you can give those kind of instruction to the operator, so that grid issue stability should be maintained.
Thank you, Varun. Thank you, Mr. Vajpayee and Mr. Meshram. I think we have answered all the questions here.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you. Now, may I request Madam Preeti Saluja ji, our co-chairperson for Madhya Pradesh chapter, to deliver the final formal vote of thanks. Madam, are you there? Over to Madam Preeti Saluja ji.
Very good afternoon to all the dignitaries present over here. And it would have been a very privileged I was very, very privileged to be a part of this extremely knowledgeful session. And it was a brainstorming session on a very, very important topic on making MP an electric vehicle state. As we all are aware of that this rise of electric vehicle industry will not only contribute to the economic growth through steady employment generation and also in terms of safety, profitability for India, but it will make a very positive impact on the environment also. So, but of course, yes, transformation to entirely new system of transportation brings many challenges, as we had been discussing over here. And for that, in our initial session, inaugural session, we had been witnessing that how the people, the bureaucrats from our government have given those encouraging policies also, that in Madhya Pradesh, how we are actually going to implement these electronic vehicle infrastructure. Still, there are many hitches in the common people and of course, all the stakeholders who had been associated. And it has been really meaningful, this panel discussion, which has come up with so many factors regarding the infrastructure facilities, the charging challenges, the parking facilities, the electric energy availability. So these all challenges have been so beautifully discussed that I'm so grateful and thankful to all the panelists and all the people who have been here on this platform, which has been created by PHDCCI MP chapter. And I truly, on the behalf of PHDCCI, truly believe that these recommendations will definitely help MP state to develop this electronic vehicle infrastructure and facilitate this electronic vehicle industry. I am grateful to Mr. Salil Gupta ji, our co-chairman, Power RE and AE Committee, PHDCCI, for his very useful inputs. I'm so grateful to all our panelists, Srimati Nidhi Singh Rajput, Mr. Firoz Meshram ji, CGM, MP, PMCL, Dr. Surendra Vajpayee ji, MP, Urjaa Vikas Nigam, who had been truly handling the queries also. And I hope the people, all the dignitaries present over here have been truly benefited by his insights and suggestions. Mr. Varun Chaturvedi ji, who is founder and CEO of Voltec EV Charging. Mr. S. Muralidharan ji, Chairman of Mobility Aftermarket Private Limited. Mr. Tusharjit Bhardwaj ji, founder Saurya Urjaa Technology, for all the motivating and the recommendations, what we have got it today from our experts. And we are so hopeful that what we are dreaming for India, that is the EV country first, that will be started from Madhya Pradesh, and the PHDCCI will always advocate for such type of all the advancements and developments. I'm extremely thankful to Mr. Ashish Modani, Vice President and Sector Head, ICRA Limited, and Madhya Pradesh Urjaa Vikas Nigam Limited for supporting PHDCCI always in such initiatives. I'm extremely thankful to all the members, the team members of PHDCCI over the leadership at Delhi, and Mr. Anirudh Dubey ji, who is the backbone of these innovative type of initiatives. So I'm extremely thankful for sparing your time, and also all the delegates and entrepreneurs who have joined this session, and which is going to be a very meaningful session, which will make MP the first state which will be the fully electronic vehicle state. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
I am Dr. Surendra Vajpayee. Would like to convey my sincere thanks to all participants, senior officials, especially Mr. Yogesh Srivastava, Mr. Ajay Bansal, Mr. Pradeep, Chairman MP Chapter, and Ms. Preeti Saluja, and my dear friend Anirudh Dubey, who has put in a lot of efforts to make this event success. I hope the deliberations and the knowledge shared during the course of this webinar must have really enriched you, and hopefully we'll take this mission forward, and we'll surely make it happen on the grounds. Meshamji has already suggested that whoever is interested to set up a charging infra across the state, his team is ready to deliver within 24 hours. That's a great commitment from the government side. As far as other initiatives are concerned, we will look into it and we'll definitely process the proceeding of this webinar to government, and we'll see what else can be done in order to motivate the electric mobility in the state. Thank you once again, PSD. Thank you, Amrut, for being so active in organizing such an event. I'm really thankful the kind of arrangement you have made and the kind of deliberation you have arranged. Really, thanks a lot for the entire team of PHDCCI. And we look forward.
All credit goes to you, sir. All credit goes to you, sir.
As I keep sharing, as I keep requesting that we want more such events to happen in the session of PHDCCI, and we look forward that we will have a regular kind of this conversation or deliberations, so that the stakeholders remains live and we can really reach the target. Thank you once again. Thank you very much.
We are extremely thankful to you all, sir, for sparing your time, and we are fortunate enough to have our very, very active and inspiring leadership at Delhi, and also at our MP chapter under the chairmanship of Mr. Pradeep Karamblekar, and very, very, and the team with very, very hard working and very initiative.
It's an energy-full team. That's the reason we are interacting each time on the subject of energy. The MP chapter of PHDCCI is really full of energy. Everyone, I mean, whoever I'm proud of energy, and we look more such events, we look more such interaction to really achieve the fruits on the ground. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.